Good morning, dear students. In the last class, we have discussed on a photograph written by Shirley Tolson. I hope that you have completed the notes. I hope you have gone through the poetical devices. Today we are going to see the chapter, The Portrait of a Lady, written by Khushwant Singh. The Portrait of a Lady is a real story of the writer's grandmother. We have already seen the name of the writer is Khushwant Singh, and he hails from Punjab. His grandmother was an old lady. The writer tells us the story of his childhood that he had spent with his grandmother, and also some other aspects that the grandmother had to undergo in his absence when he went away for his studies. Beautiful and emotional moments are present in this summary. The writer recalls his grandmother as short, healthy, and slightly bent. Her hairs were silver in color and were scattered messily on her wrinkled face. You see, this is actually the portrait of the grandmother that is drawn by someone. The wrinkles are there on her face and the hair is carelessly done. He is the writer Khushwant Singh. In the beginning paragraphs, he is actually explaining the physical features of his grandmother. She used to walk around the whole house in white clothes. She kept her one hand resting on her waist and the other was telling the beads of her rosary. You see, in this picture, you will find a rosary in her hand. Rosary is a device which helps one to pray. The writer thinks of her as not very pretty but constantly beautiful all the time. You know that pretty and beautiful, two concepts that he uses. Here, physically speaking, he says that she is not that much pretty. But her smartness, her intelligence is something much beyond his imaginations. Therefore, he calls her beautiful. He compares her calm face with the winter landscape. During their lengthy stay in the village, grandmother woke him up from the bed in every morning, plastered his wooden slate, organized his breakfast, and sent him to the school. These days, what our mothers are doing, the same work is being done by the grandmother for Khushwant Singh. On his way back to the home, she used to give stale chapatis to the street dog. When they went to the school, she used to carry some chapatis. And if those leftover chapatis were thrown to the dogs when they were returning to their house. Now, a time occurs that they have to leave the village and go to a city. There is a change taking place in the relationship between the grandmother and the writer. Now, the writer used to go to the city school on a school bus and studied subjects like English, physics, mathematics, many more subjects. Those subjects were not known to the grandmother, and therefore she could not help him anyway. Therefore, she could not be together with him more time. We have seen that he used to go by bus. And therefore, she is now not able to go with him to the school. These few activities actually had occupied her life when they were in the village. Now she becomes lonely. His grandmother could no longer go to school with him to send him. She felt upset that there was no teaching about God and scriptures at the city school. Instead, he was given music lessons, which was considered to be something odd at that time. Certain aspects an old traditional grandmother could not accept, but she had to force herself to go with it. When the writer went to a university, he got a separate room in his house. Now he is doing his university studies. So he is completely getting into a special room. Maybe not to get disturbed in his studies or something. He needs to concentrate more. The common link of the relationship between the grandson and the grandmother was broken now. Now the grandmother rarely talked to anyone in the house. Almost she is becoming silent in the house. So now what she does to pass the time is to sit beside her spinning wheel. She had a spinning wheel and she sat along with it and recited prayers of God. Another activity that she carried out was feeding the sparrows. Many sparrows used to come to this particular house where they lived. And she found joy in feeding these sparrows. When the writer left for abroad for his further studies, his grandmother did not get disturbed at all. Now, anyway, she is ready to accept any situation that happens to Khushwant Singh. Now she is realizing that as a part of his progress, he has to move around, he has to be away from her, and she accepts that. Seeing the grandmother at her old age, he now thinks that sometimes by next time when he comes back, he may not be able to meet her. But after 5 years, when he returned to the same house, his grandmother was very happy to see him, to welcome him back, and she made a great celebration at his return. Next morning, after the return of his grandson, she got ill. Although the doctor told that it was a slight fever and would go away very soon, still she could foresee that her time to leave the world was near. She felt that she was going to die. She did not want to waste her time talking to someone. She wanted to prepare for her death. How to prepare for death? By praying. By being in complete touch with God. So, she took to praying. Almost all the time she had the rosary in her hand. She went to her bed praying and telling the beads till her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell down from her lifeless hand. To grieve her death, that day also the sparrows came and they knew that the grandmother was not there alive. They also became sad. And an act of reverence and commitment to the sparrow, to the grandmother, the sparrows decided not to eat anything on that day. Some had spread out some pieces of bread, but when the funeral was taken, when the people came back their home, they could see the bread crumbs were left as it was, or as they were. This is the picture of a funeral procession, a procession in which the dead body is carried to the burial ground. Everyone gets together to give last respect to the person who dies and taken to the cemetery or the burial ground, and the procession is being done for that. You see the situation of the birds, they are so sad. When they left in procession, they too went away very sad. So, dear students, we have been going through the summary of the relationship between the grandmother and Khushwant Singh. You can read the chapter from the beginning till the end and try to understand this chapter once again with these clips. And the next day we will come with the question answers and some other grammatical explanations along with the sentences mentioned in this chapter. Till then, bye-bye.